Locker Room, with all the sports news you need, live.
Hello, very good evening to you, and welcome to your last Friday night show, believe it or not, of the season. But of course, we'll be back on tomorrow, and Monday will be the last show. But tonight is the last Friday night show. Looking ahead to the game in the Scottish Cup tomorrow between Aberdeen and Celtic. Reagan has joined us as always. Get your comments coming in. We're on Facebook, YouTube, X, and Twitch as well. But before we dive into the game tomorrow, Reagan, Scottish football doesn't seem to surprise us anymore. There's shocking news coming out, and there's been a bit of shock news in the past hour that Michael Wimmer has left Motherwell. What's your reaction to that?
Well, Michael, you're the first person to tell me because I've not seen anything the last hour. I've been really, really busy. It's been hard to get a hold of me. I've actually that's the first time you've actually broke the news to me there. No, that's interesting. I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, he said he loved a tea cake with Stephen Reside, former colleague on the show. So I really don't know why. But to me, I think Tony Docherty would be the ideal sort of manager for there, because I feel, or even like a Scott Brown, like I was saying to even yesterday, I just feel like they would be the kind of candidates that we would do for Motherwell. But yeah, I'm shocked by the news, but as you say, Michael, nothing shocks you in Scottish football. And of course, we're doing a Celtic Aberdeen preview for tomorrow. Or I know Aberdeen are the home team, so Aberdeen versus Celtic. But I think there's so much talking points as well in terms of what actually happened last night, and also about Hearts actually having a new manager. So there's so much to get stuck right into.
Yeah, no, so the news gets broke about an hour ago, Reagan. So basically, my manager of ex-Motherwell manager, actually now Michael Wimmer, has left.
Have they said any reason to why, or?
Well, they say it was due to family issues, right? But when you read some other reports, like it said that he's left Motherwell to join Rosenborg, who plays in who plays in
Norway.
Germany, Norway.
Yeah, Rosenborg played Norway, so it must be.
No, it's not Rosenborg. Sorry, I can't pronounce the name, but it's a German third tier. That season. So I do. Yeah, obviously, I'll give you a bit of time to digest that news and come back to it later on in the show. But
obviously,
I thought we'd just ask you.
And I was reading today, Michael, about 1 o'clock that Stuart Gettlewell's the favourite for the commander job now as well. So that could be a managerial merry-go-round at the summer.
Yeah, because obviously we've got Dundee sacking Tony Docherty as well. But nothing surprises you with Scottish football.
No.
So yeah. So there we go. So get your comments coming in on that story, and we will build up to the game now between Aberdeen and Celtic in the Scottish Cup final tomorrow at Hampden Park. Obviously, we'll be live after the game with the post-match show. 5:15, we're on tomorrow night, so get your alarm clock set for that time, and do join us tomorrow as well. Reagan, Aberdeen against Celtic. Obviously, we got a taste of we got a taste of the fixture a couple of weeks ago up at Piccoglie. Celtic wiped the floor with Aberdeen, and obviously they've wiped the floor with them a few times this season. What are you expecting tomorrow? Are you expecting a a totally different game, or are you expecting a case of like Aberdeen has still got that in their mind about Celtic's heavy defeat against them in the League Cup final at Christmas?
Yeah, I think it'll be psychological for Aberdeen. I just feel like, especially if you look at this season, they got beat 5-1 at Celtic Park, 5-1 at home, and 6-0 at Hampden. And then obviously Pittodrie 2 weeks on Wednesday ago, Michael, when Celtic were already champions and Celtic played essentially some of their B players and some of their C players as well when Rocky. He's hardly played this season. So I would say that there's a bit of a psychological edge there between Celtic and Aberdeen. I'd be interested to know if any Aberdeen fans have got that feeling going into it. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I was at the match last year when Celtic and Aberdeen drew 3-3 and Miovski scored the opening goal. And then Celtic fought back in penalties, and then Joe Hart took a penalty. Michael, I don't know if you were present at that game, but that game felt to me as if Aberdeen needed to win that. But I'm interested to see if Paul Donaldson's about tonight, because he would be interested to speak to in terms of. I just don't know if the Aberdeen manager, see Jimmy, can really, if he can really do the same approach that he's done the last few games, because the last few games Aberdeen played Celtic, it's not went well, so he needs to adapt to the situation. As I've been saying all season, with Ange Postecoglou at Tottenham, he adapted, Michael, um, and then things like that. You know what I mean? If you adapt, you can get rewards, and I think if you continue to do the same thing all the time and you get beat, it's the first sign of insanity. I mean, I just don't think Aberdeen should really be doing the same thing, because if they're going to do the same thing, then the same thing's going to keep happening.
Yeah, obviously, I was looking at the Scottish Cup head-to-head this afternoon, and basically, obviously, I was good looking at the Scottish Cup head-to-head, the kind of like this afternoon, and Aberdeen has won 7 times. Celtic Celtic has won 42 times in the Scottish Cup. So, sorry, I don't know what happened, Reagan. Somebody must have got into the backside of our computer, and it cut us off for a good few minutes there. So all good now.
Yeah, I mean, as you were saying there about Aberdeen and Celtic, Michael, I think it's going to be a close game, but I just feel the psychological edge will be with Celtic at the moment.
Yeah, no. So I was looking at the head-to-head Reagan in the Scottish Cup, right? And Aberdeen doesn't have seem to have a good record in the Scottish Cup. Aberdeen has won the Scottish Cup 7 times, Celtic 42 times, and basically there's a massive gap there in that. Do you think that will be? Do you think that will play a significant part tomorrow?
I think it will play a significant part because Celtic are used to these occasions, but I think if Aberdeen's got any chance, then they need to just stay in the game for as long as they can. And to be honest with you, Michael, I think Celtic are quite vulnerable at set pieces. I really do. I feel like if Aberdeen can get a throw in a corner and that, I feel like they can really exploit. But I'm glad to see that Jack McKenzie is back in training and doing well. Because that was a terrible thing that the Aberdeen supporter done, and I'm glad that what actually happened because I think that as David Martindale said last night, as we'll get on to soon, Michael. I think a lot of football fans they now go to football and think they can do anything they want, and that's not what you should be able to do. I mean, that could have really caused a lot of damage to Jack McKenzie. I mean, for it to like to get guys so close to his face. I mean, that could have been possible brain damage if the chair gets very close. So I just feel like sometimes we kind of underestimate what these things can actually do.
Yeah, and I suppose like talking about that incident last week, I suppose that's got to play a big part in this mental health. Um, I'll be interested to see if he starts the game tomorrow or be a sub. Or yep. I'll
Yeah,
be, you know.
yeah. I don't think he'll start, but I think it's great to see that he's up and about and he's doing well because that could have damaged him for the long term. That could have put him back. That could have put him back for the long term and really set him back. So I'm glad that there's not a kind of bad outcome to it. But I know we're going to talk to Tino soon about from the Celtic Exchange about what Celtic can do. But I'm just interested in what Aberdeen can do because they need to start fast and not make sure Celtic have not got the space and the time to get on the ball. Because if they let Celtic dictate proceedings, then for me there's only going to be one winner.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I suppose that when I was looking at this afternoon, Aberdeen winning the Scottish Cup 7 times to Celtic 42. Aberdeen's Aberdeen has not won the Scottish Cup since 2017 compared to Celtic. I mean that's been, you would say that's been Celtic's second home for like the past a number of years.
Well, I spoke to Tino today, and he was just saying about the fact that we were talking about it, and you'll hear it in a second. But he was saying that Brendan Rodgers has changed the mentality of going to the National Stadium, and I think he's spot on there because what Brendan Rodgers has managed to do. I mean, I bet you've been to Hampden to watch all sorts of Scottish football matches, Michael. And I remember Celtic playing um, a lot of teams at Hampden, and you weren't too sure. But Brendan Rodgers has still not lost a game at Hampden. Yeah, but now I'm hearing that we're going to hear from the Celtic Exchange, um, Tino. So I'm joined here this Friday by Tino from the Celtic Exchange podcast. Tino, thank you for joining me.
Pleasure, Regan. Always great to come on the show. Always great to chat with you. So, yeah, we were just chatting briefly before coming on. Both very excited about the weekend and looking forward to hopefully another treble for Celtic.
Yeah, I don't want to speak too soon, Tino, but I think with Aberdeen's recent form and Celtic playing really well, I think Celtic can be very positive in terms of what the outcome of the match might be on Saturday.
Yeah, I think we've got to be confident, and we're overwhelming favourites, and rightly so. Aberdeen, a real up and down season for them, and actually the second half particularly has been mostly down, albeit the big plus for them is making the cup final. So I don't know, like any cup final, you never know. And Crystal Palace weren't favourites last week, but they beat Man City. But I just think if Celtic do what they can do, turn up and play the way we can play, knowing as well that Brendan Rodgers won't allow for any complacency, I've got to be confident of a Celtic win.
Tino, I think you're spot on there, and I think the big talking point this week has been about Rio. But for you, Tino, who do you think will replace Rio in that midfield lineup for Celtic on Saturday?
I think it's going to be Paulo Bernardo, although Bernardo got the nod on Trophy Day there and wasn't great, but he was then replaced by Luke McCowan, who also wasn't great, if we're being honest. Don't know if it was just that kind of day where Celtic themselves just didn't fully get going, apart from the big James Forrest moment. But I think Bernardo is the player that the manager slightly favours, and I think he'll get the nod. I also seen Adam Ida talking about him just in the last 24 hours or so, and saying he's just an exceptional player. They see him day in and day out in training, and he's just a brilliant technician. I think it'll be Bernardo alongside Kalmak and Arne Engels.
Yeah, I mean, Tino, I just wanted to ask you as well, because I think it's interesting when you look at Celtic's recruitment over the past year or something. I mean, Paulo Bernardo's somebody that the people like us were saying Celtic need to go out and spend the $6 million and bring him to the club. But I think, if you ask Bernardo, he would probably say that he probably expected to play more.
Yeah, he's been a wee bit unlucky with injury, but even before he got injured, he wasn't particularly in the team, if you like. And it just seems that Brendan Rodgers has really favoured this three of Callum McGregor, Rio Hatate and Arne Engels. And I don't know, he's not really budged from that much this season. I'd need to check the stats, but Bernardo hasn't had many starts at all. He'll be frustrated at that, but he does seem quite a mature young guy. People speak about the fact that he was captain of Portugal's under-21s, I think it was. He's clearly got, some leadership skills and some maturity. And it looks like he's the kind of guy he won't be happy not playing, but he's willing to be patient and wait for his chance. And it's a big chance this weekend, apart from anything else. And it's up to him ahead of the summer to show Brendan Rodgers that he doesn't need to go and recruit in this era, that there's enough talent in this midfield, including him, to kick on it the next season.
I think one of the benefits of the Celtic squad this year, if you look back to 2024, is the fact that there's so much fighting for places. Because if you look at last season, you had people like Thiago Holm, Kwon, who weren't really impacting the squad. But this season, you've got a really strong midfield area.
Yeah, I think you've got all season long. It's been that kind of core group of five. So it's the favoured three I mentioned: McGregor, Hatate, and Engels, and then it's been Bernardo and Luke McCowan providing that competition. I suppose very quickly though, when Bernardo got injured, you realised we're quite light all of a sudden. The only backup at that time was Luke McCowan, and I wonder again if we go and recruit in that area. I've always felt we need some genuine competition at defensive midfield for Callum McGregor, but I wonder if we go and recruit, or if there's any future for Odin Holm and Kwon to a lesser extent. I don't know what would be the answer on those two guys. Probably not, but you never know. But yeah, it's an area that we need to just make sure we're covered in. So there's work to be done one way or another.
Yeah, I don't know how much you've seen of him, But I would be going for a young man at Motherwell.
Yeah.
I just think if I'm Celtic board, I'm going there and saying what you want for him, potentially 4 or 5 million, because that's a guy that's 17 years of age and he's already a really good player. And I think with under the steership of Brendan Rodgers, it could get even better.
Yeah, I'd be on board with that, Regan. I think Lennon Miller's a guy that we should be signing. I think we've seen it several times before. John McGinn's the big example, but even in more recent times, guys leaving Scotland like Lewis Ferguson, Aaron Hickey, Josh Doig, guys that would all have been in Celtic's ballpark, affordable wise. And if Motherwell want to dig their heels in, for a big price tag for Lennon Miller, they're right to do so. He's their biggest asset. He's 18 and he's already got something close to 100 senior appearances. They're right to hold out for maybe the 4 or 5 that you've suggested, maybe even more. But also Celtic should pay it. We've got the funds to do so. We know the talent's there. And with Brendan Rodgers looking after him, you could really see a guy like that develop. And Celtic could benefit for 2-3 seasons, and then you could get a big sell on as well. I just think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I think I think the great thing for this final as well is that James Forrest is finally scored as well, because it takes the pressure off him as well. And I think as well, it's a big choice now for Brendan Rodgers. Does he stick with James Forrest, or does he twist with Maeda playing wide or Adam Maeda up top?
I think I was chatting about this the other day. Brendan Rodgers doesn't do sentimentality. It's not his thing. He picks his strongest side for any given occasion. And I think at this moment, he still feels that James Forrest is an impact player for him. I think we'll see Daizen Maeda on the left, Adam Maeda through the middle, and Nicholas Kuhn on the right. I absolutely wouldn't be disappointed, though, if Forrest get the start. Far from it. I'd be excited by it. But I do think James Forrest will need to bide his time, come in off the bench, like he done at the weekend. And he's shown, hasn't he, in recent times, that he can absolutely have an impact. What a moment that was, Regan, on Saturday.
Oh, I mean, I don't know if you were in the stadium, but it was so amazing to be there and witness it. I mean, there were so many people that I didn't know that were high fiving, they were cheering, they were doing all sorts. It was just an amazing moment to be part of.
Yeah, I'm the same. I was lucky enough to be there. I was running about on Saturday. I was running late. I actually missed the first half due to some other commitments, but I got in just as James Forrest came on. He was part of the triple substitution. And it wasn't a great second half. It was a wee bit kind of flat, and Celtic were a bit pedestrian, and St Mirren were running the clock and all these things. But it was a huge moment. It's a moment, without sounding too dramatic, I don't think I'll ever forget it. It was brilliant. It was such an emotional moment as well. And the roar that went up, I was speaking to someone else about that. The roar that went up seemed to just hang in the air for 3, 4, 5 minutes, and it was great to be part of it. I'm glad you were there yourself, and just delighted for the player, delighted for James Forrest. It's exactly what he deserves for the attitude, the effort, and the commitment that he puts in.
Definitely, and it's like I said to people before. You go back to 2024. I mean, James Forrest scored 2 very important goals away up at Dundee, and if he didn't score the 2 important goals, Celtic don't win that title that year. So there's so many things that James Forrest has done for the club over the years, and I heard people talking about tedious trebles and tedious titles and stuff like that, and I just think, well, these titles are so hard to win.
Yeah, they are. And I seen Kasper Schmeichel speaking last week, and he says the reason Celtic win so many trophies, out with the undoubted talent that the squad has within it, is that Celtic, in his opinion, work harder than anybody else. And, he's there every day at Lennoxtown. Kasper Schmeichel's a guy who I think is 37, 38. He could easily call it a day, and he'll be a wealthy man, and he could go and enjoy his life without the stresses and the hassles and the demands of top flight football. But him and all his teammates, James Forrest, Callum McGregor, and everyone else that's part of that group, they put in so much, and that's why you get the rewards that you get. So the only people that are using terms like tedious trebles are maybe bitter opposition fans or bitter journalists. Anyone who's part of it, Regan, myself, yourself, and anyone who's been part of following Celtic this season and many seasons before now, know that it's far from tedious, and it's another big one to look forward to at the weekend.
I just had one final point of James Forrest, and it was the fact that he tore Aberdeen to shreds on Tuesday or Wednesday of last week, and that was the only thing for me psychologically. I'm thinking for people like Graham Shinnie or Niskanen, who he was tearing apart, and I'm thinking possibly that might be in the manager's mind.
Very true, and I think Shinnie in particular was really struggling with him. Graham Shinnie's a good professional. He's been an important player for Aberdeen, but the legs aren't quite what they maybe once were. And I mean, he'll be similar age, I suppose, with James Forrest, but James Forrest looked so lively against him, so sharp. And if Forrest gets an odd, what you do have is a player brimming with confidence. James Forrest could not be any more confident than he is right now. He's Celtic's most decorated player. We know all about the fact that he's got over 100 goals for the club, 100 assists for the club. He's a one-club man. He knows what it takes to win big trophies. You mentioned big games and big moments for him last season. I think he also scored an important goal in the semi-final against Aberdeen at Hampden. That game that went to penalties and stuff.
He did. I was there, aye.
Yeah, so he's been there and done it, and that experience is vital as well. It's great to have the talent and guys that are fairly new to Celtic, like Arne Engels, like Nicholas Kuhn. But you also need that experience, and that's where guys like James Forrest, Callum McGregor, Alistair Johnson now, CCV, Greg Taylor, who it might be his last game for Celtic. These guys have all got all that experience as well. So there's a nice blend in the Celtic team, and James Forrest is a huge part of that.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk to you about Brendan Rodgers' legacy at Scottish football and Celtic, because he could be the first manager at Celtic to win 3 trebles. I mean, people can talk about the standard of Scottish football and stuff like that, but for Brendan Rodgers to come up here and win 3 trebles would be incredible.
That incredible is the word. I think it's a phenomenal achievement if he managed to do so. And I think any question marks or any doubters when he first came back, they're gone now. They're absolutely gone. If he wins on Saturday, that will be 12 trophies as Celtic manager. And I put an article out just across our site this week, Regan, to say that the priority during the summer must be to try and extend that deal for Brendan Rodgers and James Forrest, actually. Both are out of contract at the end of next season. And I think and hope there's work going on behind the scenes to extend both of them, because they're both so important to what Celtic are doing and what they're trying to do moving forward.
And I don't know about you, Tino, but I just feel like if Celtic go on and win 5 titles in a row, Brendan Rodgers will be looking at that 10 again. You know, I'm not going to say Celtic are going to do it and win everything there, but Brendan Rodgers will be looking at that, because his family are very seldom here in Scotland. I know his wife and his daughter are very happy here and stuff like that. So that'll be something that'll be in Brendan Rodgers' mind.
Yeah, I think when he was here first time around, he still had itchy feet for the English Premier League and to prove a point. He got a lot of flack after things didn't work out at Liverpool, and I think that stuck in his throat a wee bit. And I think even though he fully embraced the Celtic job first time around, towards the end, there was rumours that there was some niggles between him and the board and some of the players that were being signed. And I think added into the mix the fact that he did want to kind of prove himself again down south. It was kind of inevitable almost that he would go back down there and turn his hand to Leicester. And initially done well, FA Cup, 2 5th place finishes, but obviously it didn't work out so well in the end with Leicester getting relegated. But now, second time around at Celtic, he just seems really content with his lot. You mentioned about his wife and daughter, that I've heard those reports that they're very settled here in Scotland and they love the way of life up here. I just don't think he's in a great hurry to move anywhere. I think you'll have seen the quote that he's 200% going to be here for next season, which is great. And it's just a question of what's beyond that. And I think he's suggested that he's going to speak to Dermot Desmond in the coming weeks. And I think if they can have an open, frank and positive chat about things, there's every chance he extends it. And the initial 3-year deal might become a 4, 5, maybe even 6-year. We'll see what happens. But at this moment in time, he seems very happy with life at Celtic.
I was just going to ask you, Tino, I mean, I'll take you back to 2016 when Brendan Rodgers in his very first Scottish final against Aberdeen. Tom Rogic, that last minute winner.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's just something special, but Celtic playing Aberdeen in a Scottish final in the last day of the season.
No doubt about it. That Tom Rogic moment, it's got to go down as a favourite Celtic moment for all of us in terms of recent years. If you look back to some of the highlights since Brendan Rodgers came in first time around, there's quadruple trebles, there's even last season's Scottish Cup win at Hampden. But that Tom Rogic moment probably tops the lot. Probably, there might be some folk that debate it, but it's certainly up there. It's certainly one that's in the discussion. So the fact that we're now facing Aberdeen again, almost, so what'll it be, 9 seasons on from that first time around, it's exciting, and there's a prospect of it being another historic day at Hampden.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Tino. And I think a big thing for Brendan Rodgers as well, and make no mistake about it, Tino. I think Brendan Rodgers is somebody that knows the history of football, and he knows how important that is for him to look back at these moments and be part of Celtic's project in terms of looking back in years when he's retired or when he's sitting back and looking. I'm sure he wants to be like modern day Celtic's best manager.
There's no doubt about it. Brendan Rodgers has got an ego, but I say that in the healthiest sense of the word. I think it's a positive thing to have a confidence and a belief in yourself, and there's no doubt Brendan Rodgers has that. And I've heard him saying, when people talk about, that's your latest trophy, that's another treble or whatever, he's kind of said words along the lines of the fact that one day he'll sit and reflect on what he's achieved, when he's long retired. But at this moment in time, and I bring James Forrest back into the discussion here, these guys are just relentless about winning the next trophy. So if Celtic are fortunate enough to lift the trophy on Saturday, they'll enjoy it, they'll celebrate on Saturday night, maybe even on Sunday. And by Monday, Celtic are thinking, what's next? What is next year's campaign looking like? Can we make it 5 in a row in the league? Can we win another Scottish Cup? Can we win a treble? Can we progress in Europe? There's a real relentless nature about this Celtic side, and I think that comes from Brendan Rodgers. He's the one that sets the tone. So it's great for these guys to add another trophy to their collection, but I love the fact that they're always looking at the next trophy beyond this one.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Tino, but I just feel like Brendan Rodgers has changed the whole perception about Celtic going Celtic when they go to the National Stadium as well. Because I remember going to the National Stadium when you were kind of apprehensive about what Celtic were turning up, and that was under like the people like Glenn Loovens and Stokes and people like that. But now you kind of expect Celtic to do really well, and I think that's because Brendan Rodgers has changed the mentality, the mentality, because he speaks about the fact that it's such a big park as well, and it makes a big difference as well because it's somewhere like Celtic Park where it's a big space to play on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The surface is huge and it's similar-ish. I think it's probably a bit bigger than Celtic Park, but it definitely suits the way we play in terms of getting out to the wide guys, whether it is Nicholas Kuhn, James Forrest, Maeda, Yang, if he comes off the bench, maybe Sean McArdle. I'd love to see him as part of it. But the size of Hampden and the width that allows is a big plus for Celtic. But I think the most important thing is the first thing you mentioned. It's the mentality, and Brendan Rodgers instilled that belief when he arrived in, for the 2016-17 season. You're right, under Ronnie Dyla and even at times under Neil Lennon, we huffed and puffed a wee bit at Hampden. And Brendan Rodgers, if I'm right in saying, is still unbeaten. He's won every single time. The only time he never won in the 90 minutes was that Aberdeen game that I mentioned that went to penalties. And the record, you could maybe tell me, I'm not sure, but it's something like 18 or 19 wins at Hampden. It's outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I think the only 2 matches we've not won under Brendan at Hampden is this season's final against Rangers, and then the Aberdeen one last season.
Of course, yeah.
So I mean, the record that speaks for itself. I think that's a mentality thing that the players know what to expect, and I think as well, McGregor said it when he spoke to the press last week. He said if we don't win a treble, it's now disappointing. And that's the standards that Brendan Rodgers and McGregor as well, they set for themselves from the start of the season.
Yeah, do you know, if you look across the city just at the moment, they'd bite your hand off for a League Cup at this moment in time, let alone a League, a Scottish Cup and a League Cup treble. You seen how they celebrated under, was it Philippe Clement when they won the League Cup? Celtic set their sights so much higher than Rangers at this moment in time and were streets away from where they are and where they want to be. But that's a challenge for Celtic. You know, if there's investment across the city, then that's up to Celtic to respond accordingly. But in terms of right now, the standard has been set so high, and I don't think you can underestimate what Brendan Rodgers has done in both his spells to set those standards. That is who he is, and he's just so ambitious as a guy, and anything less than their best, he just won't allow. And that's again why I'm so confident getting into Saturday, because Celtic could go in there and get through the motions and possibly still win. He won't allow for that. He'll make sure they're fully switched on, fully focused this week in training, and I think you can expect to see a really strong version of Celtic turn up at Hampden on Saturday.
Would you?
There you go.
Mike.
That was Tino speak to Reagan yesterday, and it made a lot of good points, Reagan. But I wanted to pick up on one of the points that you made, Tim. I know that we were at the game last week and James Forrest scored that goal, but I don't know about you, right? But when they scored the goal, it was like Celtic winning the league all over again.
Yeah, it was brilliant because everybody was just overcome emotion for James Forrest because of that moment. He scoring 16 seasons in a row. It was an incredible achievement. I know that people on a certain radio station were kind of laughing about it, saying that if you're playing in Scotland, you should be able to score 25 goals every season if you're playing for Celtic. But I think in general, James Forrest has been a total legend at Celtic. But I think tomorrow he will add another trophy to his big collection, because I just think I just don't see any way unless Celtic get a dodgy penalty against them or a sending off. I don't see any way that Aberdeen can really do it. But I do hope it's a great final, because I hope Aberdeen can produce the Aberdeen that we all know that they did at the start of the season. I mean, they went something like 11 matches unbeaten at the start of the season. And I think if they were to go out tomorrow and they were to do really bad, then this season would go under a cloud, because Aberdeen fans would think, well, how come you can do that for the first 11 games, and then for the next 30 games you're below St Johnstone in the table? I mean, if you look at the table since January, Aberdeen are bottom of the table. Aberdeen are below St Johnstone in the table.
I mean, what do you think's went wrong with Aberdeen? Because obviously, Aberdeen fans, I don't know if it was a bit of Scottish banter that they were having, that they were thinking they're going to win the league as well. But what's happened to Aberdeen? Because like they went on a run of 13 or 14 games unbeaten, and then when they came up against Celtic, they kind of hit a wall. So what is it? Is it a confidence issue, or?
I just don't think, from watching them, they've got a clear defined style of play. I think the manager, when he comes up against any kind of decent opposition, I think Des made the point in Ulster during the season. They were saying that if you look at Aberdeen's fixtures in the first 10 matches, they were playing St Johnstone. They were playing I wouldn't say. Well, let's just say I would say they had favourable fixtures at the start of the season, and then the big test they passed was against Rangers, because people were saying, well, if they can beat Rangers, then we can talk about a title race. But I still didn't genuinely think that after beating Rangers and being 9 points, 9 points ahead of Rangers, I still genuinely felt that Rangers would finish above Aberdeen because I just felt watching them during that spell when they were doing really well. They still for me didn't have a real style of play. I think but it'll be interesting to see what CU Jimmy does tomorrow, because does he put more men behind the ball? Does he bring another defender in and play free at the back and then play kind of wing backs? I'm interested to see what he does, Michael.
Do you think as well that I know that we were talking about Michael Vimmer at the top of the show. Okay, here is Motherwell. It's a different situation as well. Tony Docherty was sacked from Dundee and all the rest of it. Do you think that Aberdeen board will look at Jimmy Sardin's future if he gets a heavy defeat tomorrow?
I think it'll be in the back of the minds because, as I said, if you look at the table from January, they are bottom of the table. You know, and that's not a good start. And of course, they finished fifth in the table, and they've got a qualifier for the Conference League in Europe. That's all great, but I just feel like after the first 12 or 13 games, as the person commenting saying, they had so many people that were playing well, and I just think right now it looks a bit mumbo jumbo. You look at I watched Aberdeen against St Mirren about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and St Mirren won 1-0, Michael. And I was at that game and I'm thinking, Aberdeen just look as if they could play all day and no score. I don't know if there's any Aberdeen fans in the comments, but I was at that game and I'm thinking, it just looks as if St Mirren are. Well, I mean, St Mirren were behind the ball when they were defending that, but it just didn't feel as if they were possibly going to trouble St Mirren that much to do anything. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the manager approaches it. I mean, does he try and pack them in field and do something different? Because it's okay saying you're bringing wingers and bringing attacking players, but then that brings space to people like Arnie Engels, Bernardo, McGregor, Maeda, people like that. So it's a difficult one for the manager to weigh up, but that's why he gets paid £2 million, and I'm stuck here with you, Michael. So,
thanks very much. What about I know that I was saying about Jimmy Turlin that the Aberdeen fans might be calling for said if they get a heavy defeat tomorrow, but also I know I've said this on the show a few times this season as well, Regan, but do you think Aberdeen fans will start to look at Dave Cormack as well? Because I mean, he's appointed the kind of like three managers, and I'm not saying Jimmy's a kind of failure far from that. I mean, he might go on and win the Scottish Cup tomorrow.
I know that sounds quite reactionary, but it depends how the final goes. If it's a close final and say Celtic get a last minute winner and Aberdeen really put up a good fight, then no, Jimmy's job is safe. You know what I mean? But say Aberdeen get beat 6-0 in the Scottish Cup final, then there will be big questions.
What about obviously you were saying there about to know about that about Celtic should maybe tie Brendan Rodgers up and James Forrest, but I mean it's one of these ones where you saw that last week at the Celtic game where all the Celtic fans kind of like appreciate James Forrest, because I don't know if you know this, Regan, but there's still a kind of like divide in the Celtic support about James Forrest, but in terms of like him scoring that goal last week, do you think that he will buy more Celtic fans over? I know that's stupid me saying that, but you know,
I think Celtic must watch the show, the Green Brigade or whatever, because you said about a few weeks ago that James Forrest has not got a song. You said that about a month ago, and then James Forrest has got a song. So I don't know if you're in contact with the people at Celtic or the people that make up these songs, but fair play, Michael. Aye, but I think in general, I think it's also a bit of bias maybe because he's Scottish. Maybe if it was Jota, because like everybody loves Jota, right? But I think when you look at what James Forrest has done, he's going to be the most decorated Celtic player in the whole club's time as being alive, and I think that's something to be very proud of, and it's something that we should all look back on and be very happy about because you remember that that's a guy that's through the academy, and it's something that I've said for a while. Celtic don't promote a lot of academy players. I know people can throw back about Tierney and McGregor and Forrest, but these guys are prime examples. But you think about the money that Celtic are shelling it every single month, every single year for the academy. I think they should be doing more. And I think James Forrest is a prime example that if you work hard and you do well, then you can get your just rewards in that because I think he's been absolutely fantastic.
And I suppose like when we go on about Scottish players coming through their ranks, like Aberdeen's had them down the years as well. But when you talk about James Forrest, Callum McGregor, and the likes of that, not only it's a good thing for not only a good thing for Celtic, but a good thing for Scottish football as well.
It's been great. I mean, James Forrest has been really good, and I think Celtic are a juggernaut at the moment. I know I might jinx it for Celtic fans watching, but I just think that Celtic are in a prime place for the next couple of years to do really well. I think they've got everything set up to do well, but I'm hoping that it's going to be a really close final tomorrow. I do see PJ McLaughlin's comment saying that Liam Henderson ended up in Italy. Yeah, I know that, but I just feel like Celtic could have possibly breaded these guys through to the first team. But I don't know if it's because of the expectation, Pete McLaughlin, because I think sometimes you look at these players like Ben Doak. I mean, Ben Doak was never really told, right? You're going to be a player for us to do really well, and I think that's part of the problem. I think he only got like 2 minutes against Dundee United and a couple of minutes against Rangers when Celtic run riot that night on a Wednesday night. I remember the game, but I just feel like they need to be able to show these guys that there's a pathway. That there's another guy this week moving on. Daniel's away to West Ham in the academy, so I just feel like there needs to be more things brought through, Michael. But I know that we need to finish now, so that's one for another show.
Yeah, so well, of course, like we'll be back tomorrow with the reaction show Aberdeen against Celtic live from Hampden. 5:15 we're on tomorrow, and then don't forget we'll be back on Monday night for the second leg of the playoffs between between Ross County and Livingston at Ross County, and that will be the last show of the season as well. So thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks to Reagan as always. Thanks to everybody. It's commented on